The Vethani had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. They were tall beings with skin like pale silver and eyes that glowed soft blue. They could read minds. They could feel emotions across great distances. They had never known war. They had never needed weapons. Their civilization spread across 1,000,000 worlds, and everywhere they went, they brought peace. Their ancient books spoke of a small blue world at the edge of the galaxy. They called it Terra. The book said that one day, when darkness came to threaten all life, the children of Terra would come. They would be angels, beings of pure light and goodness. They would save the Vethani from destruction. High Oracle Velis had read these words since she was a child. She believed them with all her heart. She had to believe them now, because the darkness had finally come. The Drakari swarm appeared from the center of the galaxy like a plague. They were insects the size of buildings. They had no mercy. They had no fear. They existed only to consume. World after world fell to their hunger. The Vethani tried to reason with them. They tried to share their minds and find common ground. The Drakari ate their diplomats alive. Velis stood in the great temple on the holy world of Korath Prime. 2 billion of her people lived on this planet. Millions more had already died on distant worlds. The Vethani fleet tried to fight, but they did not know how. Their ships were built for exploration, not war. Their people were gentle. They broke easily. "We must send a signal," Velis said to the council. "We must call to Terra." The other oracles looked at her with tired eyes. "The prophecy is just a story," one said. "There are no angels coming to save us." "Then we die believing in something beautiful," Velis replied. "I would rather die with hope than live with none." She walked to the ancient machine at the heart of the temple. It had waited thousands of years for this moment. Velis placed her hands on its surface and closed her eyes. She pushed her thoughts into it, and the machine sent those thoughts screaming across the galaxy at impossible speed. "Children of Terra," she whispered, "we await your divine light. Please, save us." The message flew through space for 3 days. It passed dead worlds and burning colonies. It passed Drakari fleets that were too busy feeding to notice. It reached the edge of explored space and kept going. It found the small blue world called Terra, and Terra heard. Velis waited. The council lost faith. The Drakari grew closer. Reports came every hour of new defeats. 100 Vethani worlds had fallen. Then 200. The swarm was endless. Every time they killed 1,000 Drakari, 10,000 more appeared. 1 month after sending the signal, Velis received a response. She was sleeping when her mind suddenly filled with static. It was like trying to hear a voice through a thunderstorm. The Terrans were speaking, but their minds were wrong somehow. They were silent, empty. She could not feel their emotions or read their thoughts. All she could hear were words. "This is Captain Park Minho of the Terran spaceship Revenant. We received your message. We are coming." Velis wept with joy. The angels were real. They were coming to save her people. She gathered the council. She told them the good news. For the first time in months, the Vethani felt hope. They prepared a welcome ceremony. They wrote songs of greeting. They practiced their smiles. 2 weeks later, a ship appeared in orbit above Korath Prime, but it was not what they expected. The Vethani ships were white and gold. They were shaped like flowers, with graceful curves and soft lights. They looked like art. The Terran ship looked like it had been through hell. It was black and gray, covered in scars and burns. Parts of it were held together with metal plates that did not match. Weapons covered every surface. Big weapons. Weapons designed to kill. Velis felt her hope flicker. Perhaps angels do not need beautiful ships, she told herself. Perhaps they care more about function than form. She went to the landing bay with the council. They wore their finest robes. They carried flowers and gifts. They were ready to greet their saviors with love and gratitude. The ship landed hard. Its engines roared like angry beasts. Smoke poured from its vents. The ramp lowered with a grinding sound of metal on metal dot. A figure stepped out. Velis had imagined beings of light, tall and thin and glowing. Voices like music. Movements like dance dot. Instead, she saw a creature built for violence dot. Captain Park Minho was short by Vethani standards, but twice as wide. His body was thick with muscle and wrapped in armor that looked like it had stopped many blades. His skin was brown and weathered. His black hair was cut short. His eyes did not glow. They were dark and deep and calculating. He smiled at them. The Vethani stepped back. His smile showed teeth. Many teeth. Sharp teeth. It was not a gesture of peace. It was a threat display. A predator showing its weapons dot, but Minho did not seem to know this. He walked forward with his hand extended. "Hi, Oracle Velis?" he asked. His voice was rough. "I'm Captain Minho. We came as fast as we could." Velis tried to read his mind. She found nothing. It was like staring into a black hole. His thoughts were invisible. His emotions were hidden. He was a void in the shape of a person. She had never felt so afraid of another being. You are the angels of Terra," she asked. My Nho laughed. It was a strange sound. Loud and sharp. Angels? No, nobody's called us that before. He looked back at his ship, then at the stars above. "We heard you were having a war. We'd like to participate." More figures emerged from the ship. Men and women in armor. They carried weapons openly. They moved like hunters. Their minds were all silent, all empty, all terrifying. Velis looked at them and felt something. Cold grow in her stomach. These were not angels. She did not know what they were yet. But as she watched them scan the landing bay with predator eyes, she realized that the prophecy had been wrong. The angels never came. Terra had sent something else entirely, and somewhere in the darkness of space, the Drakari swarm was about to learn what that something was. Commander Oren had fought the Drakari for 6 months. He had watched his friends die. He had seen entire worlds burn, but nothing had prepared him for the terror of meeting humans. He stood in the meeting room of the Vethani flagship, watching Captain Minho and his officers take their seats. The humans moved wrong. They did not glide like Vethani. They walked with heavy steps, like each footfall was a small act of violence against the floor. Their bodies were dense and compact. Their hands were thick with calluses, and their minds were empty. Arn had spent his whole life surrounded by thoughts. Every Vethani could hear other Vethani. It was natural. It was comforting. It was like breathing. The humans were silent. Talking to them was like talking to the dead. "Thank you for coming," Arn said carefully. "We have prepared a full report on the Drakari threat. Their numbers, their tactics, their weaknesses." "Good," Minho said. He was looking around the room with those dark, calculating eyes. "How many ships do you have?" "We have 3,000 vessels remaining. We started with 20,000. And the Drakari?" Oren felt sick. "Our estimates suggest they have over 400,000 ships. Perhaps more. They breed faster than we can count them." He expected the human to show fear, or at least concern. Instead, Minho just nodded slowly. "We've faced worse odds," he said. "Show me where they're thickest. That's where we'll hit first." Oren stared at him. "You want to attack their strongest position? With 300 ships?" 312, Minho corrected. "And yes, the enemy expects you to be weak. They expect you to run. We're going to teach them that running toward us is much more dangerous than running away." The meeting continued for hours. Lieutenant Yuna, a small woman with cold eyes, presented battle strategies. She spoke of ambushes and traps and something she called acceptable losses. The Vethany grew more uncomfortable with each word. "What do you mean by acceptable losses?" Orin asked. "How many of our soldiers were willing to sacrifice to achieve an objective?" Yuna explained. Her voice was calm, empty of emotion. "Every victory has a cost. We calculate that cost and decide if it's worth paying. You would send your own people to die? Knowingly?" Yuna looked at him with something like pity. "Commander, that's what soldiers are for. We don't fight to survive. We fight to win. Sometimes those are different things." After the meeting, Orin walked the halls of his ship in a daze. He found Scholar Mira in the observation deck, watching the human ship through the window. She was the finest researcher in the Vethani collective. She had studied 1,000 alien species, but she looked troubled. "What have you learned about them?" Orin asked. "Too much," Myra said, "and not enough." She pulled up her notes on a display screen. "They call themselves humans. They come from the third planet of their star system. They have only been traveling through space for about 300 years. 300 years? They're children. Children who have been at war with themselves for their entire history." Myra showed him images from the human database. Cities on fire. Soldiers fighting soldiers. Weapons that could destroy whole countries. They call it human nature. They fight each other constantly. Over land, over ideas, over things they call religions. They have killed hundreds of millions of their own kind. Orin felt his stomach turn. "They're monsters." "Perhaps. But look at this." Myra showed him more images. Humans helping each other after disasters. Humans caring for their sick and old. Humans crying at funerals. Humans laughing with children. They are also capable of great love, great sacrifice, great beauty. They create art that makes me weep. They write poetry about peace while building weapons of destruction. How can both things be true? I do not know, but I am beginning to fear them more than I fear the Drakari. In the medical bay, Dr. Hana was treating wounded Vethani soldiers. She was a small woman with gentle hands, but even she terrified the patients. A young Vethani warrior named Tal had been burned in battle. His wounds were healing slowly. Dr. Hana examined him with strange tools and made notes on a device. "I can help you heal faster," she said, "but I need to give you an injection." She pulled out a needle. Tal screamed. "What is that?" He cried. "You want to stab me?" "It's medicine," Hannah said patiently. "It goes under your skin to fight infection. You pierce your own flesh." "With metal?" "All the time. Humans inject themselves with many things. Medicines, nutrients. We even inject ourselves with dead diseases." Tal stared at her with wide eyes. "Why would you put diseases inside yourself?" "To make our bodies stronger. Our systems learn to fight the dead disease, so when the living disease comes, we're already prepared." Hannah smiled. It was meant to be comforting. It was not. Humans have survived plagues that killed millions of us. We got stronger each time. Our bodies remember everything that ever tried to kill us. Tal looked at Orin with pleading eyes. Orin did not know what to say. Hannah continued examining the Vethani patients. She was efficient and skilled, but everything she did seemed like violence. She cut away dead flesh with sharp tools. She sewed wounds closed with thread. She spoke casually about breaking bones so they could heal correctly. "In humans," she explained, "broken bones grow back stronger than before. Our bodies assume that if something broke once, it might break again. So it adds extra material, extra strength. That is horrifying," Tal whispered. "That is survival," Hannah said. Later that night, Orin found Minho alone on the observation deck. The human captain was staring at the stars with a strange expression. For a moment, he almost looked peaceful. "Can I ask you something?" Oren said. "Go ahead. Why did you come? You could have ignored our message. The Drakari are not your problem. This is not your war." Minho was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. "My grandmother used to tell me stories," he said, "about the old wars on Terra, about the times when evil people tried to hurt innocent people, and about the soldiers who stood between them." He turned to look at Arn. "She said that doing nothing when you can do something is the same as helping the enemy. She said that good people have a duty to fight, even if you might die. Especially then." Minho smiled that terrible smile again. "Besides, we're not good at staying out of fights. It's not in our nature." Oren thought about what Myra had said, about humans killing each other for thousands of years, about weapons that could destroy worlds. "What exactly is your nature?" he asked. Minho looked back at the stars. His eyes grew distant, cold. "We are what happens when evolution decides that nothing is more important than survival. Not peace, not kindness, not mercy. We were forged in a world that tried to kill us every single day. And we killed it right back." He paused. "Your people see us and expect angels. But angels don't survive. Angels don't win wars. Angels sit in the sky and watch while innocent people die." His voice dropped to a whisper. "We are not angels, Commander. We are what comes after you realize angels aren't coming. We are the monsters that hunt other monsters. We are the violence that protects peace." He looked at Oren with those dark, empty eyes. "We are the demons of Terra, and the Drakari have no idea what they've awakened." The Terran fleet arrived 3 weeks after the Revenant. Scholar Mira watched them emerge from faster-than-light travel one by one. She counted 311 additional ships. They were not beautiful. They were not elegant. They looked like weapons with engines attached. Every ship bore scars from previous battles. The humans had been fighting something before they came here. They were always fighting something. Myra continued her research. She spent hours in the human database, learning everything she could about these strange creatures. The more she learned, the more afraid she became. Humans were pursuit predators. On their homeworld, they did not have claws or fangs or venom. They were not the fastest or strongest animals. But they had something worse. They had endurance. Other predators would chase prey until they got tired. Then they would give up. Humans never gave up. They would chase an animal for days, walking, running, never stopping. The prey would exhaust itself trying to escape. It would collapse from heat and exhaustion. And the humans would finally catch up, still walking, still breathing, still coming. This was called persistence hunting. It was the foundation of human nature. Never stop. Never quit. Never let the prey rest. Myra thought about the Drakari. They were used to enemies who ran, enemies who hid, enemies who eventually gave up. The humans would not give up. The humans would never stop coming. She found Sergeant Taiho in the training area. He was a large man covered in scars. His face looked like it had been broken and rebuilt several times. He was teaching Vetheni soldiers how to fight with their hands. "Your people rely too much on weapons," he said. "What happens when your weapon breaks? When you run out of ammunition? You need to be able to kill with anything. Your hands, your feet, a rock, a piece of broken metal." A young Vetheni tried to hit a training dummy. His blow was weak and awkward. "No," Taiho said. He grabbed the soldier's arm and positioned it differently. "You're thinking about it too much. Don't aim for the target. Aim through the target. Imagine your fist going all the way through his skull." The Vetheni looked ill. "That's horrible. That's survival. The Drakari won't stop because you asked nicely. They'll stop when they're dead or you're dead. Those are the only two options. Myra approached carefully. Sergeant Taiho? May I ask you some questions from my research? Taiho shrugged. Sure, but keep up. I don't stop training. He began running laps around the room. Myra struggled to follow. Her Vethany body was not built for such activity. How long can you run like this? She asked between breaths. Hours, days if I have to. Humans can outrun any animal on our planet over long distances. Our bodies are designed for it. And the sweating? Why are you leaking? Taiho laughed. We sweat to cool down. Most animals have to stop and pant to cool off. We can cool ourselves while still moving. It's one of our advantages. Myra was already exhausted. Taiho looked like he could continue forever. Tell me about pain, she said. How do humans deal with pain? We feel it. We ignore it. We keep fighting. Taiho slowed down slightly. Our brains can release chemicals that block pain signals. In battle, soldiers can be shot or stabbed and not even notice until the fighting is over. We call it adrenaline. It's like a drug our bodies make to help us survive. That sounds dangerous. It is. It is. Soldiers sometimes fight with wounds that should kill them. They only die when they finally relax. When the adrenaline wears off. He smiled, and it was a sad smile. I've seen men with their guts hanging out still swinging their rifles. I've seen women with broken legs dragging themselves forward to complete their missions. We're hard to kill, Scholar. Very hard to kill. Later, Myra found Private Siwan sitting alone in a corridor. He was the youngest human she had met. His face was still soft, not yet hardened by years of battle. He was reading something on a small device. May I speak with you? Myra asked. SIWO looked up. Oh, sure. Scholar Myra, right? You're the one writing the report about us. Yes, I'm trying to understand your species. Good luck with that. We don't even understand ourselves. Myra sat beside him. Do you not fear death? All of you seem so calm about dying. Siwan was quiet for a moment. Of course, we fear death. Everyone does. But he struggled to find the right words. There are things we fear more than death. Losing our friends. Failing our mission. Letting innocent people die when we could have saved them. So you accept death? We hate death. We hate it so much that we refuse to let it win. We fight it every step of the way. Even when we know we'll lose eventually, we make death work for every single second it takes from us. Myra thought about this. That is surprisingly beautiful. Siwan laughed. Don't tell the sergeant I said that. He'd make me run laps for being soft. That night, High Oracle Velis visited the human flagship. She wanted to understand these creatures before committing her people to fight beside them. Captain Minho gave her a tour. She saw the weapons bays filled with tools of destruction. She saw the medical bay where Dr. Hana worked with frightening efficiency. She saw the training rooms where soldiers practiced killing. But she also saw other things. She saw a soldier playing a strange wooden instrument, creating music that made her hearts ache. She saw humans laughing together over a shared meal. She saw photographs of families and children pinned to walls and carried in pockets. Why do you bring pictures of your loved ones to war? She asked Minho. To remember why we fight, he said simply. Every soldier carries something from home. A picture, a letter, a small object. It reminds us what we're protecting. Does it not make dying harder? Knowing what you leave behind? Minho nodded slowly. Yes, it makes dying much harder. That's the point. We don't want easy deaths. We want deaths that mean something. Deaths that buy safety for the people we love. Velis looked at him with new eyes. You are not demons, she said softly. I was wrong about that. Were you? Demons feel no love. You feel it deeply. I can see it in how your soldiers look at each other, in how they speak of home. Minho smiled that terrible smile again. That's what makes us dangerous, Oracle. We love so deeply that we'll become demons to protect what we love. We'll do anything, become anything. There's no line we won't cross, no horror we won't embrace, if it keeps our people safe. He looked out the window at the stars. The Drakari were out there somewhere, getting closer every day. We prayed for angels, Velis whispered. What God sent us these creatures instead? Minho heard her. He turned with an expression that was almost kind. Maybe you got exactly what you prayed for, he said. Just not in the form you expected. Angels are beings of light and mercy. But sometimes mercy means letting evil win. Sometimes light isn't enough to hold back the darkness. He put a hand on her shoulder. It was heavy and warm and strong. You needed warriors who would stand between you and extinction. Warriors who would pay any price and bear any burden. Warriors who would become the very thing they fought against if that's what it took to win. His voice dropped low. You needed monsters who chose to be monsters. Demons who fight for heaven. Darkness that serves the light. He stepped back and straightened his uniform. Prepare your people, Oracle. Tomorrow we teach the Drakari what happens when they threaten something that humans have decided to protect. Velis walked back to her shuttle in silence. Our minds were full of conflicting emotions. Fear, hope, awe, horror. The humans were terrifying. They were also magnificent, and she realized, with growing certainty, that the Drakari had made a terrible mistake. They thought they were hunting prey. They thought the Vethani were weak and alone. They had no idea that something far worse than themselves was now hunting them. The demons of Terra had arrived, and hell was coming with them. The Drakari came to Korath Prime like a wave of darkness. 40,000 ships blotted out the stars. The swarm filled every sensor screen with a sea of red dots. Each dot was death. Each dot was hunger. Commander Orn looked at the display and felt despair crush his chest. 2 billion Vethani lived on the planet below. Women, children, scholars, artists, all waiting to be consumed. We must evacuate, he said. We can save maybe 10% of the population if we begin now. High Oracle Velis stood beside him, her face gray with grief. And abandon the rest? What choice do we have? We cannot win this battle. We can only save who we can and retreat to fight another day. Captain Minho stepped forward. He had been silent, studying the enemy formations with those calculating eyes. When he spoke, his voice was like steel. No, Orn turned to him. Captain, you do not understand. We are outnumbered 100 to 1. The mathematics are simple. We cannot win. I don't care about mathematics. Minho's voice grew harder. I care about those 2 billion people. I care about the children who will be eaten alive if we run. I care about the message we send to every other world if we abandon Korath Prime without a fight. The message that we are wise enough to survive? The message that we can be scared away, that we can be beaten, that the Drakari just need to bring enough ships and will flee like cowards. Minho shook his head. No, we fight here. We win here. Or we die here. But we do not run. Lieutenant Yuna pulled up tactical displays. I've analyzed their formation. They're overconfident. They think this will be easy. They're not expecting resistance. Because resistance is illogical, Orn said. Logic is for peacetime. Yuna smiled her cold smile. This is war. War is about will. About breaking the enemy's spirit before you break their bodies. The Drakari have never faced an enemy that stood and fought. We're going to teach them what that looks like. The human fleet moved into position. 300 ships forming a thin line between the Drakari swarm and Korath Prime. Behind them, the Vethany fleet hesitated. Orin looked at Velis. She looked at him. "If we run," she said quietly, "we survive. But we stop being who we are. We become cowards, prey, victims. And if we stay, we die. Then we die as the Vethany Collective, proud and defiant, standing beside our strange, terrifying allies." She straightened her robes, ordered the fleet to advance. The battle began at sunrise on Korath Prime. Billions of Vethany looked up at the sky and saw fire. The humans did not fight like the Vethany expected. They did not form defensive lines. They did not try to hold positions. They attacked, always attacked. Small groups of human ships dove into the Drakari formation like wolves among sheep. They struck hard and fast, destroying dozens of enemy vessels before pulling back. Then they did it again. And again, the Drakari were confused. Their prey was supposed to run. Their prey was supposed to be afraid. Instead, these small scarred ships were hunting them. Captain Minho commanded from the bridge of the Revenant. His orders were calm and precise. Third wing, target their command cluster. Fourth wing, cover their retreat. Fifth wing, prepare for boarding action. Boarding action? Orin was shocked. "You're going to board enemy ships?" "Their carriers are full of ground troops meant for the invasion. Those troops are worthless in space." Minho grinned. "We're going to introduce them to human soldiers. Up close and personal." Across the battle, human Marines crashed their shuttles into Drakari carriers. They cut through the hulls with plasma torches and stormed inside. The fighting was brutal and bloody. Drakari warriors were 3 times the size of humans, with armor like stone and claws like swords. It did not matter. Sergeant Taiho led the assault on the largest carrier. His Marines moved in tight formations, covering each other, never stopping, never hesitating. They shot Drakari warriors between the eyes. They stabbed them in the joints of their armor. They kept pushing forward over mountains of bodies. "Keep moving," Taiho shouted. "The reactor is 3 levels down. We blow the reactor, we kill the ship." A Drakari warrior caught one of his men and tore him in half. Taiho watched his soldier die. He felt rage and grief and cold focus. He turned his weapon on the warrior and emptied his entire magazine into its face. "That was for Hyan," he said as the creature fell. "Now move. We have a job to do." They reached the reactor. They set the charges. They ran for their lives as the carrier exploded behind them. On the ground, the situation was worse. The Drakari had landed 300,000 warriors outside the capital city. The human ground forces numbered 900. They were all that stood between the swarm and 2 million civilians. Taiho reached the surface as the siege began. He looked at his Marines. They were tired and bloody, and some of them were wounded. They knew the odds. They knew what was coming. "Listen up," he said. "Command says we need to hold this city for 6 days. Reinforcements are coming, but they won't get here before then. 6 days, that's all." Private Siwan spoke up. "Sergeant, there are 300,000 of them and 900 of us. I know the math, Private, but the math doesn't know us." Taiho checked his weapon. "We're going to make them pay for every meter, every street, every building. We're going to stack their bodies so high they'll have to climb over their own dead to reach us. And if we run out of ammunition, then we use knives. And if the knives break, we use our hands. And if our hands break, we use our teeth." Taiho looked at his soldiers with fierce pride. "We are Terran Marines. We do not lose. We do not surrender. We do not stop, ever." The siege lasted 6 days. The first day, The Drakari attacked in waves. The humans mowed them down with mounted guns and artillery. The streets ran dark with alien blood. The second day, the Drakari adapted. They came through the sewers and the buildings. The fighting became close and personal. Humans died. Many humans died. But more Drakari died. The third day, ammunition began to run low. Taiho ordered his soldiers to conserve every bullet, to make every shot count, to use traps and ambush instead of direct fire. The fourth day, Suwon's squad was overrun. The young private found himself alone in a collapsed building, surrounded by Drakari warriors. He should have died. Instead, he found a broken piece of metal and fought his way out, killing 11 enemies before reaching friendly lines. The fifth day, Taiho was wounded. A Drakari blade cut through his armor and into his side. Dr. Hana patched him up in a ruined hospital, working by flashlight while explosions shook the walls. "You need to rest," she said. "You've lost too much blood. I'll rest when they're dead." Taiho stood up and grabbed his weapon. "Or when I am." The sixth day, the reinforcements arrived. 200 human ships broke through the Drakari orbital blockade. Thousands of fresh Marines dropped from the sky in burning metal pods. The Drakari, exhausted from 6 days of fighting, found themselves facing an enemy that was fresh and angry and utterly without mercy. When the battle ended, the humans counted their dead. 312 Marines had fallen. The ground was covered with Drakari corpses. The count reached 170,000 before they stopped counting. Oren found Taiho standing on a hill of enemy bodies. The sergeant was wounded in 17 places. His armor was more blood than metal. His weapon was empty and dented from being used as a club. "Sergeant," Oren said softly, "it's over. You won." Taiho looked at him with exhausted eyes. For a moment, he seemed like something other than human. Something ancient and terrible and magnificent. "What took you so long?" he asked. Then he fell. He was still breathing. Still fighting. Still refusing to die. Because that's what humans did. They never stopped. They never gave up. They never let death win. Not ever. News of the Battle of Korath Prime spread across the galaxy like wildfire. 100 different species heard the story. They heard about the small fleet that stood against 40,000 ships. They heard about 900 soldiers who held a city against 300,000 warriors. They heard about creatures called humans who did not know how to surrender. On the world of Karath 5, the Marathi High Council watched recordings of the battle. The Marathi were ancient beings, slow and wise and patient. They had survived the Drakari by hiding in asteroid fields and praying for death to pass them by. Now they watched humans charge into enemy formations. They watched Marines fight hand-to-hand with creatures 3 times their size. They watched a sergeant stand on a mountain of corpses and ask for more enemies to kill. "What are these things?" the eldest Marathi asked. "They call themselves humans," another answered. "They come from a small world at the edge of the galaxy. They've only been among the stars for 3 centuries. Children, infants, and yet they fight like ancient war gods. Perhaps we should send a message. Perhaps they would help us too." The Marathi sent their message. Humans came. The Drakari occupying their world died screaming. On the frozen moon of Thesa, the Kalvani collective received the same news. The Kalvani were small, quick creatures with fur like silver and eyes like gems. They had been prey for so long they had forgotten how to be anything else. A young Kalvani named Bressa watched the recordings over and over. She saw humans dying, bleeding, screaming, but never stopping, never giving up, never accepting defeat. "We could be like that," she whispered. "We could fight back." The elders laughed at her. "We are not warriors. We are survivors. We hide and wait and let the storm pass. And if the storm never passes, what then? Bressa stole a ship and flew to the human fleet. She found Captain Minho and stood before him, tiny and trembling, but refusing to look away. "Teach me," she said. "Teach my people to fight." Minho looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled that terrible smile. "Welcome to the war," he said. Scholar Myra finished her report. She called it the Terran anomaly, a species that should not exist. It was the longest document she had ever written. It was also the most disturbing. She presented her findings to the Vethany High Council. Hierarchal Velis sat at the head of the table, listening with growing unease. "Humans evolved as persistence predators," Myra explained. "They chase their prey to exhaustion over distances that would kill most species. Their bodies developed remarkable adaptations for this purpose. They can run for hours without stopping. They sweat to cool themselves while moving. Their muscles contain special fibers that resist fatigue." She showed anatomical diagrams. The council members shifted uncomfortably. "Their bones are dense and strong. When broken, they heal even stronger than before. Their immune systems are terrifyingly aggressive. They inject themselves with dead diseases to prepare their bodies for live ones. They have survived plagues that killed hundreds of millions and emerged stronger each time." "This is biology," a council member said. "Impressive, but not unique. The biology is only the beginning." Myra changed the display. "Humans have fought wars against themselves for their entire recorded history. Their deadliest conflicts were not against alien species. They were against other humans." She showed images of human wars. Explosions that leveled cities. Weapons that poisoned the land for generations. Conflicts that killed tens of millions in single events. They developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet, multiple times over. And they continued developing more. Myra's voice was quiet. They knew what they were building. They knew the danger. They did not stop. The council was silent. "And yet," Myra continued, "they also created works of profound beauty. Music that makes my souls weep. Art that captures emotions I cannot name. They fall in love with the intensity of supernovas. They die for strangers. They adopt orphans from other species and raise them as their own." She showed images of human families. Parents holding children. Friends laughing together. Lovers watching sunsets. "They are not demons," Myra said. "They are not angels. They are something far more terrifying. They are both. Darkness and light in the same flesh. Love and fury sharing the same heart." Velis spoke for the first time. "What does this mean for us? For the war? It means the Drakari have awakened something they do not understand. Humans do not fight because they enjoy killing. They fight because they love so deeply that they will become monsters to protect what they love. They will sacrifice everything. Endure anything. Become anything." Myra looked at each council member in turn. "We called them demons. We were wrong. They are mirrors. They reflect whatever they face. If we show them peace, they show us peace. If we show them war, they show us a violence that makes the Drakari look like children playing with toys." Far across the galaxy, the Drakari High Command received intelligence on their new enemy. A creature called the Queen Mother sat at the center of the swarm, processing information from 1,000,000 sensors and spies. She learned about humans, about their history, about their capabilities, about what they had done at Korath Prime. For the first time in her ancient existence, she felt something unfamiliar. It took her many hours to identify the emotion that it was fear. The humans were coming, not to defend, not to protect. They were coming to hunt. They were tracking the swarm across the stars, following trails of destruction, getting closer every day. And they were not alone anymore. Other species were joining them. The Marathi had emerged from hiding. The Kalvani were learning to fight. A dozen races that had accepted extinction were suddenly standing up, suddenly fighting back, suddenly believing that victory was possible because of the humans, because of those impossible, terrifying, beautiful creatures who refused to accept defeat. The Queen Mother called her admirals together. "We must destroy them," she said, "before they destroy us. Before they teach the entire galaxy that we can be beaten." "How?" an admiral asked. "They do not fight like other species. They do not respond to fear or pain or logic. Then we find what they do fear, what they do love, what they will die to protect." The Queen Mother's voice was cold and hard. "And we use it against them." The war was about to become personal. On the human flagship, Minho received reports from across the front lines. New allies, new victories, new hope spreading through the galaxy like light through darkness. But he also received other reports. Casualty lists that grew longer every day. Names of friends who would never come home. Letters to families that would never see their loved ones again. He sat alone in his quarters, looking at a photograph of his grandmother. She had died before he joined the military. He wished he could talk to her now. "Are we doing the right thing?" he asked the empty room. "Are we saving the galaxy or just spreading our violence across it?" There was no answer. There never was. Una found him there an hour later. She looked in his face and understood without asking. "The cost is getting higher," she said. "It's always high. That's what victory costs. Then we make sure it's worth paying." She sat beside him. "Every species we save, every world we protect, every child who grows up free because we fought. That's what makes it worth it." Minho nodded slowly. "Sometimes I forget. That's why we have each other. To remember." Una looked at the photograph. "She would be proud of you. She would call me a fool for running toward danger. And then she would tell everyone how brave her grandson is." Una smiled. It was almost warm. "We're not monsters, Captain. We're just people who love things worth dying for." Minho looked at the stars through his window. The Drakari were out there. Billions of them. Hungry and angry and afraid. They had every reason to be afraid. The angels never came. The Terra delivered demons instead, and the demons were just getting started. The war had lasted 2 years. The tide was turning. The Drakari were losing ground across 1,000 star systems. Human tactics spread through the allied forces like a disease. Species that had never fought were now learning to stand their ground. Species that had accepted extinction were now pushing back. But victory had a price. It always did. Dr. Hana worked in the medical bay without rest. Wounded soldiers arrived every hour. Some could be saved. Some could not. She did her best with all of them, but her best was not always enough. A young Marine named Ji-Yong died on her table at 3 in the morning. She was 22 years old. She had been shot 7 times holding a bridge so civilians could escape. Her last words were asking if everyone made it across. "They all made it," Hana told her. "You saved them." Ji-Yong smiled and closed her eyes. She never opened them again. Hana washed the blood from her hands. It was the 47th soldier she had lost that week. Each one left a mark on her soul. Each one made her wonder how much more she could take. Minho found her standing alone in the observation deck, staring at nothing. "You need sleep," he said. "I need a lot of things." Her voice was hollow. "Sleep won't bring any of them back." "No, but it might help you save the ones still living." Hana laughed. It was a sad, broken sound. "How do you do it, Captain? How do you send them out there knowing they might not come back?" Minho was quiet for a long moment. "I don't think about the ones who might die. I think about the ones who definitely will die if I don't send them. The civilians, the children, The innocent people who can't fight for themselves. Does that make it easier? No, nothing makes it easier. It just makes it necessary. Elsewhere on the ship, Sergeant Taiho sat in his quarters. He had recovered from his wounds, but something inside him had not healed. He could not sleep anymore. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw faces. Friends he had lost. Enemies he had killed. Bodies stacked like mountains. The door chimed. He did not answer. It opened anyway. Private Siwan stepped inside. The young soldier looked older now. The war had carved away his softness and left something harder behind. Sergeant? Are you all right? I'm fine. You haven't left your quarters in 3 days. You haven't eaten. The men are worried. Taiho looked at him with empty eyes. Do you remember when you first joined? How scared you were? I remember. I was scared too. Everyone is scared at the beginning. Taiho's voice dropped to a whisper. But you stop being scared after a while. You stop feeling anything. The faces blur together. The deaths become numbers. You forget why you're fighting. Siwan sat down beside him. I haven't forgotten. How? How do you keep caring? Because I have to. Because the moment I stop caring, I become the thing we're fighting against. Just another monster killing for no reason. Siwan looked at his hands. I think about the children we saved at Karth Prime. The families we reunited. The people who got to live because we fought for them. And the ones who died because we couldn't save them? Those too. I carry them all. The living and the dead. They keep me human. Taiho was silent for a long time. Then he slowly stood up. Show me, he said. Show you what? How to carry them. How to keep going. How to stay human. His voice cracked. I've been a soldier so long I forgot there was anything else. Teach me how to remember. Lieutenant Yuna faced a different kind of darkness. She was the one who made the hard choices. Who decided which missions were worth the cost. Who calculated acceptable losses and signed off on operations that she knew would kill good people. The latest operation had been her masterpiece. A devastating strike against the Drakari supply line. It would cripple their offensive for months. It would save millions of lives. It had cost 10,000 human soldiers. She presented the results to Captain Minho. The numbers were clear. The victory was decisive. The mathematics justified every death. Her hands shook for 3 hours afterward. You made the right call, Minho told her. I know. Her voice was steady. Her eyes were not. That's what makes it worse. I ran the numbers 100 times. There was no better option. This was the least costly path, but knowing that doesn't help. No, it just makes me wonder what I've become. What kind of person can weigh lives against other lives and feel nothing? You feel everything, Minho said gently. That's why your hands are shaking. You're not a monster. Yuna, you're a soldier doing an impossible job in an impossible war. Sometimes I'm not sure there's a difference. Scholar Myra witnessed something that changed her understanding of humans forever. She attended a funeral for a soldier named Ji Yong. The ceremony was unlike anything in Vithoni culture. Humans stood in rows, wearing their finest uniforms. They did not speak telepathically. They spoke with their mouths, their voices carrying across the quiet space. They told stories about Ji Yong. How she laughed. How she loved. How she died saving strangers who would never know her name. Then something unexpected happened. These terrible warriors, these demons of Terra, began to weep. Not silently. Not secretly. They cried openly, holding each other, tears streaming down their faces. The same soldiers who had charged into enemy fire without flinching now trembled with grief. Mira watched. Captain Minho placed a hand on the casket. His face was wet with tears. His voice broke as he spoke. Sleep well, Marine. You earned it. Afterward, Myra approached him. I do not understand. You cry for one soldier, but you send thousands to die without hesitation. Because sending them is my duty, and mourning them is my honor. Minho wiped his eyes. We don't fight because we don't feel. We fight in spite of feeling. Every death hurts. Every loss leaves a scar. But we keep fighting because the people we love are worth more than our pain. That sounds like torture. It is. It is. But it's also what makes us human. We carry our dead with us. We remember their faces, their names, their dreams. He looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. The day we stop grieving is the day we become the monsters everyone thinks we are. The war continued. The humans continued. They bled and died and grieved and kept fighting. But Myra understood something new now. The humans were not invincible. They were not unfeeling. They were fragile creatures who had learned to forge their pain into strength. They did not fight because it was easy. They fought because it was necessary. And they paid for every victory with pieces of their souls as the final assault on the Drakari homeworld approached. Minho addressed his fleet one last time. Tomorrow, we end this war. Tomorrow, we face the largest battle in galactic history. Many of us will not survive. I won't pretend otherwise. His voice was steady but tired. The voice of a man who had carried too much for too long. We are not angels. We never were. We are flawed, broken, exhausted creatures who have given everything we have. But we're not done yet. We have one more fight left in us. One more battle to win. He paused, looking at the stars. They called us demons. Maybe they were right. But demons are just angels who fell and got back up. Angels who learned that mercy without strength is weakness. That peace without power is submission. His voice grew stronger. Terra does not forgive. Terra does not forget. And Terra never, ever stops. Not while our enemies stand. Not while innocent people suffer. Not while there is still one more fight to fight. He raised his fist. Tomorrow, we end the Drakari swarm. Tomorrow, we save the galaxy. And tomorrow, we prove that the best monsters are the ones who choose to fight for good. The fleet cheered. Wounded and weary and barely standing, but still fighting. Still refusing to give up. Still the demons of Terra. The Drakari homeworld was called the Core. It was a massive planet at the center of the swarm, pulsing with dark energy and ancient malice. Billions of warriors defended it. The Queen Mother herself commanded the defense from a fortress carved into the planet's mantle. The Allied fleet approached at dawn on the last day of the war. 12,000 ships from 40 different species. At the front, battered and scarred but still flying, were the 300 ships of the Terran fleet. Captain Minho stood on the bridge of the Revenant. Lieutenant Yuna was beside him, calm and focused. Dr. Hana monitored the medical stations throughout the ship. Sergeant Taiho commanded the ground forces, ready to drop when the order came. Private Siwon stood with his squad, no longer young, no longer afraid. All ships report ready, Yuna said. Minho nodded. Signal the fleet. Begin attack run. The Battle of the Core began with fire and thunder. Human ships led the charge, diving into the heart of the Drakari formation. Behind them came the Vathani, the Marathi, the Kalvani, and a dozen other species who had learned to fight. The darkness of space lit up with weapons fire so intense it looked like a second sunrise. The Drakari fought with desperate fury. They knew this was the end. They threw everything they had at the attacking fleet. Ships exploded by the hundreds. Bodies floated through the void. The cost of the battle climbed higher with every passing minute, but the Allies kept coming. They had learned from the humans. They did not stop. They did not surrender. They pushed through every defense, over every obstacle, toward the heart of the swarm. Minho watched his tactical display with cold precision. Third wave, target the orbital platforms. Fourth wave, clear a path for the ground assault. All ships prepare for close combat. A Drakari strike group broke through the front lines and headed straight for the Revenant. The flagship was old and damaged and held together with scrap metal and stubbornness. "Captain, we have incoming," Una reported. 60 ships. 30 seconds to contact. Can we avoid them? Not without abandoning the assault coordination. Minho did not hesitate. Then we don't avoid them. All hands, brace for impact. We're going through. The Revenant plowed into the Drakari formation like a knife through flesh. Its weapons blazed in all directions. Its hull screamed with impact after impact. Entire sections were torn away. Fire spread through the corridors. Crew members died at their station's dot, and still the ship kept moving. Still, it kept fighting. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, an officer shouted. "We're losing atmosphere. Seal what you can. Keep firing." "Captain, we're taking critical damage. The reactor is overheating." Minho looked at Una. Something passed between them. An understanding that needed no words. "Order all non-essential personnel to the escape pods," he said quietly. "The Revenant dies today. We make sure she dies well. The crew won't leave you, Captain." "That's not a request, Lieutenant. That's an order." Una shook her head. "If you're dying today, Captain, you're not dying alone. Besides, someone needs to aim." Minho almost smiled. "You're impossible. I learned from the best." On the surface of the core, the ground assault had begun. Sergeant Taiho led 10,000 Marines against a planet of enemies. They dropped from the sky in burning metal pods, landing in the shadow of the Queen Mother's fortress. The fighting was the worst Taiho had ever seen. Drakari warriors came in waves that seemed endless. The ground was slick with blood, both human and alien. Soldiers fell by the dozens, the hundreds. The advance measured in meters and minutes and lives, but they kept pushing forward. Private Siwan fought at the front of the assault. He had become something different over the years of war. Something harder. Something stronger. He moved through the battlefield like a ghost, killing with precise efficiency, never stopping, never slowing. A Drakari general stepped into his path. The creature was massive, covered in armor that had stopped 1,000 weapons. It looked at Siwan with ancient, intelligent eyes. "You are all going to die," it said in broken human speech. "Your ships are burning. Your people are falling. Why do you keep fighting?" Siwan raised his weapon, because giving up was never an option. He shot the general between the eyes. It fell like a mountain collapsing. The fortress was close now. Just a few hundred meters. Just a few minutes more. Taiho was at the front, as always. He had been wounded 5 times during the assault. He barely noticed. His body was running on something beyond adrenaline. Something beyond human. Pure, stubborn refusal to die. A Drakari blade caught him in the side. He felt the steel slide between his ribs. He felt his lung collapse. He kept moving. Another blade caught his leg. He stumbled. Kept moving. A third blade caught his shoulder. He dropped his rifle. Picked up a fallen sword. Kept moving. 17 steps from the fortress entrance, his body finally failed him. He fell to his knees, blood pouring from wounds that would have killed any other creature hours ago. Siwan was beside him in an instant. "Sergeant, keep going." Taiho's voice was a whisper. "The Queen. Kill the Queen. End this. I won't leave you. That's an order. Private." Taiho coughed blood. "Go. Finish it. For all of us." Siwan looked at the fortress. Looked at Taiho. Made a choice. He picked up Taiho's rifle and ran. The Queen Mother's chamber was deep in the heart of the fortress. Suan fought through every defender between him and his target. He took wounds that should have stopped him. He ignored them all. When he finally reached the chamber, he was barely standing. His armor was more blood than metal. His left arm hung useless at his side. One eye was swollen shut. The Queen Mother watched him enter. She was beautiful in a terrible way, a creature of ancient power and perfect malice. "One human," she said, "wounded and alone. Do you really think you can kill me?" Suan raised his rifle with his one good arm. Only one way to find out. He fired. The Queen Mother dodged. She was fast, faster than anything he had ever faced. She struck him with enough force to shatter bones. He flew across the chamber and crashed into the wall. He stood back up. She struck him again. He flew again. He stood again. "Why won't you die?" She screamed, because Siwan spat blood. Dying means losing, and humans don't lose. He charged. She struck him down. He got back up. She struck him down. He got back up. Each time a little slower, each time a little weaker, but always standing, always refusing to fall. Finally, she made a mistake. She grew frustrated, careless. She overextended. Siwon caught her arm. He twisted. He pulled. He brought the Queen Mother crashing to the ground. And he drove Taiho's blade through her heart. The death of the Queen Mother sent shockwaves through the swarm. The Drakari were linked to her mind. When she died, their coordination shattered. Their will collapsed. They became animals, mindless and scattered. The battle ended within hours. The war ended with it. In the ruins of the Drakari homeworld, the survivors gathered to count their dead. The cost had been enormous. Thousands of ships destroyed. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers killed. The human fleet had been reduced to wreckage. Only 47 of their ships remained operational. Captain Minho had survived, though the Revenant had not. He had been pulled from the wreckage by Vethany rescue teams, barely alive. Burned and broken, but still breathing. Dr. Hannah had saved hundreds of lives during the battle, working until she collapsed from exhaustion. They found her asleep on the floor of a makeshift hospital, surrounded by patients she had refused to abandon. Sergeant Taiho had survived. Barely. He would never fight again, but he would live. That was more than anyone had expected. Private Siwon stood in the Queen Mother's chamber, surrounded by the bodies of his enemies. When the rescue teams found him, he was sitting against the wall, still holding Taiho's blade. "Is it over?" he asked. "It's over," they told him. "You ended it. Good." He closed his eyes. "I'm going to rest now." 1 week later, High Oracle Velis stood before the surviving humans. They were gathered on the ruins of Korath Prime, the world they had saved 2 years ago. The world where everything had begun. The humans looked exhausted, broken. Many of them were wounded or scarred or missing pieces of themselves. They leaned on each other for support. They wept for friends who would never come home. Velis looked at them and felt her heart break. "We prayed for angels," she said softly. "We believed Terra would send us beings of light and mercy, creatures of purity who would save us with gentle hands." She paused, gathering herself. "We were wrong. You were not angels. You never pretended to be. You came with scars and weapons and the weight of 1,000 wars. You came broken and tired and afraid. You came human." Minho stood at the front of the crowd, supported by Yuna on one side and Hannah on the other. His face was pale, but his eyes were bright. "And thank every star in the void for that," Velis continued. "Because angels would have been kind. Angels would have been merciful. Angels would have tried to save everyone, even our enemies." She stepped forward and took Minho's hand. "You were not kind. You were not merciful. You were exactly what we needed." Demons willing to descend into hell so others wouldn't have to. Monsters willing to become the darkness so others could stay in the light. She bowed. The first time a high oracle had ever bowed to another species. The angels never came. And thank the universe for that. Because the Terra delivered demons. And demons are exactly what we needed.